that flash? I go, yeah, and both the dogs go,
Well,
it's like, but, yeah. AJ went,
said I'm out of here, right?
AJ went and checked on our house when we were gone. We walked through the house and everything was good. And the light was on in one of the bedrooms, so he shut it off. And he was driving away and he swears that it turned back on.
Is this a new one or not? Right?
You know, yeah. There used to be an old farmhouse there. Who knows? Yeah. Police department stopped and told Jefferson and some of the stuff we're going to do tomorrow night. But said that her daughter said, "Who's that lady standing at the end of my bed?" Yeah.
Then the city is more or less.
Today? Okay. Thank you.
Since the solicitors,
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a couple of things to note with regard to the agenda. First of all, I'd like to remove agenda item 7G. That's the application for gambling at Muddy Cow. The applicant has decided to withdraw their application. And as you may note in front of you, there is a revised resolution or revised agenda item 8. And that's all I had.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve that with those changes.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve the agenda with corrections. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Invocations from Cross Point Church. Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you calm the wind down a little bit?
Yeah,
as you
oh, for
came?
sure. I'm in control of that too. So.
Thank you.
Not. So, yeah, my name is Rick Stapleton, and let me just take a moment to say thank you for your leadership. Leadership is something that is vital in our world, and one of my favorite leadership verses is 1 Timothy 4:12. That'll be the basis for my prayer. It says, "Do not look down, let anyone look down on you for your youth, but set an example in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity." So let's pray. Father God, as we come, we thank you for your leadership in this world as the one who brings this world into creation and orders all things, Lord, according to your purposes. We appreciate that, and we honor you for that. We pray today that, Lord, as we meet, that we would speak the truth in love, that our conduct would be full of respect toward one another, and, Lord, that we may have the love of Christ and be filled with his wisdom and humility and his loving sacrifice as we serve tonight. Lord, may our trust in you be seen in our initiatives for the very best for our community. And we pray to God that you would grant us purity in our motivations as we seek, first of all, that you would get the glory and the honor and the praise through our efforts here tonight. I thank you for this council. I pray, God, that you would bless them in these ways. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognitions of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? All right, we have a couple resolutions under there. Resolution number 15104, resolution accepting $500 donation from Walt and Lynn Clay to the Law Enforcement Memorial Park Fund. And we have resolution number 15109, resolution accepting $30 donation from the Richard Waggy for the Hutchinson Dog Park.
I'll make a motion to accept both.
Second?
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve those two resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comment. Anybody wants to address the council, please come forward, state your name and address. Alrighty, approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of October 8th, 2019.
Make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve the meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda. This will be done with one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of resolution number 15105, resolution approving the decertification of tax increment financing district number 6 of the city of Hutchinson. B is approval of resolution number 15106, resolution for certification of special assessment from the city of Hutchinson to the McLeod County Auditor. C is resolution number 15108, resolution to sell at auction unclaimed property, and that's bicycles. D is resolution number 15110, resolution authorizing execution of sub-grant agreement through the Federal Emergency Management Agency Hazmat Mitigation Grant Fund Program. E is approval of issuing short-term gambling license to the Hutchinson Wrestling Club. F is approval of issuing caterer's permit to the T-Road Investment Incorporated on December 7th, 2019 at the Hutchinson Event Center. H is approval of improvement project change orders. Change order number 3 and 4, letting number 2, project number 19-02, South Grade Road Corridor Improvement. I is approval of correspondence to the DOT regarding Glencoe Transportation Study. And J is claims appropriation and contract payments. Is there anything that anybody wants pulled off?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Steve to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, we do have a public hearing meeting at 6, but we'll skip ahead to review of the City of Hutchinson Airport Civil Air Patrol Site Estimate, Cost, and Potential Funding. John and Kent?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor, I think I'll let John go first and just give an update of the communications discussion staff's been having with Civil Air Patrol representatives over the last few weeks since they presented in front of the council about a month or so ago. And then we'll touch base on a handout I provided here, a quick simple engineer's estimate with respect to a utility sanitary sewer and water main extensions out to that area. So with that, John, please.
Sure, thank you. I've been in contact with the Minnesota Wing CAP since they were here about a month ago, and The project that they're looking at is some barracks, dining facility, a hangar. It's kind of like a miniature air base, if you will. And that would be located just north of the former Skydive building, along Airport Road. One of the larger issues is one we'll talk about in a little while, relates to the utilities. There are gas, electric, and communications infrastructure nearby, so that won't be a problem. We do have sewer across the road, and the bigger issue that Kent will be able to talk about a little better is the water. So we've been communicating back and forth about that with CAP, talking about what needs to happen in order for that to be provided to the site. The initial discussions have been positive with them. I put together a framework for a developer agreement and then also a lease document, identifying the different things that we need to address, and their staff is taking care of that. They're putting together the documents as we speak, and I appreciate that effort. And then on my end of it, one of the bigger issues is, what's FAA gonna need for us to do this? Also MnDOT Aeronautics, and they come to me with 3 items, one of which is pretty much already taken care of, and that's compliance with our grant assurances review. And we do need to do an airport layout plan sheet update that shows the building site where this would take place. And the bigger, potentially more significant issue is the environmental review. I've been in contact with FAA and have requested categorical exclusion for this, which really reduces the work dramatically on what would need to be done. And the Minnesota Wing CAP is quite familiar with doing the environmental work, so they will take over once we know what the answer is to those questions. So they'll be taking care of that component of it, which is wonderful, because that would be it's something I wouldn't be able to do in a reasonable amount of time, so we'd end up needing to get an engineering firm to take a peek at it. So they're hoping to take care of that and are familiar with how to do that. At our last Airport Commission meeting, we talked with ASI Jet about fuel out at the site. Kind of came to the conclusion that they could, if they needed one, bring in a trailer or a truck and purchase the fuel up at the airport, bring it down to their site, if they have an event with a lot of aircraft coming in and out. And finally, we talked a lot about the, we don't want them to be any interference between their traffic and the ag traffic that takes, that uses the airport. Roughly for 8 weeks is kind of the hot part of the season for that, towards the end of the summer, early fall. So again, in communication with them, they're aware of that and will do what is necessary to coordinate that traffic. So I think all is going forward as well as we could expect, and I believe the next thing that we'll be able to take a look at is the draft of the developer agreement and the lease document. So I'll let Kent talk about the provision of the waters and sewer services. So thank you.
John, just, they're fine with the site selected?
Yes, yes.
Since it's kind of on the end there, but.
Right, no,
yeah.
well, according to their funding mechanism, they have to be on airport property, and they would prefer not to be by all the other things that are going on.
In
So
the
it actually
airport.
worked really well for them, this particular site.
And
So,
the
FAA, they're fine, having a
Yes.
barracks and.
Right, yep. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna end up with categorical exclusion, making it about as easy as we can possibly make it. That has to be tempered with the fact that it's FAA, and it's a little more challenging than probably a normal development process, but I think we'll be able to march through it quite well.
And I think they were excited about having the fairgrounds close by to
Right. Yeah,
utilize
they
the
would-
buildings there too.
They anticipate utilizing, particularly in the cold months,
Inside.
using maybe the gym or some other things like that for their physical activity. So.
How many barracks are they looking at, John? Do you know?
Originally, they talked to me about 2, but now they're talking about 1 that is actually 2. They have roughly need for 120 male cadets, plus the leaders for them, and then about 30 female cadets. So initially, they talked about 2 separate buildings, but now I think they're talking more about 1 that has basically a wall through
Divider.
it. Yeah, a divider, so that those 2 are kept separate, so.
Thanks, Jack. John mentioned, here's the former Skydive Hutchinson building that's now occupied by another business. And this is the site that's been identified. Thus, we've zeroed in on our sewer and water trunk main and then our lateral main scenario to get sewer and water across the airport road, CASA 115. And basically what we're doing is we're taking off behind Target here, the southwest corner of Target at the end of Edmonton Avenue, extending the 10-inch PVC water main. That'll be a trunk main that parallels the existing 18-inch sanitary sewer, which is this line tracking through here. That was built about 18 years ago, and that was built to service out to the southwest area of the community, the Ravenwood development in that area, south of Century, and then ultimately, the intention was at that time to have a facility to service the school district's property in the southwesterly corner of School Road, Church Corner, exactly, School Road and South Grade Road. So what we've done is we paralleled that main, and then these 2 mains are what we call lateral water and sewer mains. They'll be 8-inch mains that extend across the airport road. We'll do a directional drilling construction approach to get them under airport road, so that doesn't need to be ripped up for that size of a main. There's some low area in here. We're pretty comfortable. We're not going to have any issues there with just open trench excavation and getting through that. We will look at alternatives here to cross the ditch here, if we want to bore that or just open cut it. But we've included worst case scenario within our estimate at this point in time. And then really what's in the packets this drawing, our full cost estimate, what I handed out this evening is this, which is our standard engineer's estimate feasibility report approach. And the number does differ a little bit from the total costs on the full estimate that's in the packet. We did add $15,000 for geotechnical work, and like I said, that's really to zero in what we need to do to cross those low-lying areas and specifically that ditch there. So yeah, total we're looking at for these main extensions is $350,000. We break it down on a lateral and trunk facility basis, and that's alluded to in the full estimate. So that arrives at, if you go down to the funding here, assessable costs, Civil Air Patrol and the county respectively for their share of the sewer and water main lateral pair comes to $55,000 each. And then if you come down to the bottom here, you get into the city's contributions to the water and wastewater funds. The trunk facility, the 10-inch facility that parallels the existing trunk sanitary main is estimated at $190,000. The lateral water main is $25,000, and then the lateral city share of that lateral is $30,000. You got 25 and 30. Obviously, that arrives at 55. So we've approached it from a third basis at this point, understanding that the county would have some, pop this back up, some benefit because this is their property that surrounds this area of the lateral. Civil Air Patrol obviously is the driver for this improvement. So we looked at it from a third basis from that standpoint. And then the city would ultimately have some benefit to service this area on that southwesterly side of Airport Road. So pretty simplified split, seems to make sense. We're going to be having, obviously John's already had discussions with Civil Air Patrol. We're going to be having further discussions with the county, not only with respect to their potential contribution from an assessment standpoint for those mains, but also the long-term approach to this ditch here. This ditch to the north, as you're probably aware of, was filled, many years ago. There's a large pipe. We've been having conversations with the county fair board for many years. There's some erosion issues back here. Could the ditch be filled? Should it be regraded? Filled and put a pipe in. Obviously there'd be a large pipe put in place of the ditch, basically an extension of the pipe to the north. So we're gonna have those conversations with the county at this point in time also. Ultimately, the two projects could be let in one letting to hopefully get some economies of scale. Any questions? From a funding standpoint, John and I have met with City Administrator Yannick. I'm sure Mr. Reed's probably aware of the approach. I don't know if Matt mentioned.
We had a brief conversation.
Brief conversation, yeah. This isn't a lot of money out of the water and sewer funds. There are adequate reserve funds, and that's what Matt communicated would more than likely be the funding source.
Right, that's what Matt and I had talked about, was our healthy reserves. There's capacity there to do this project. And in reality, it's the appropriate place to fund it from anyway, since it's improvements for those two facilities, for the two funds. So we'll have to capitalize those improvements within the water and sewer funds, so using those dollars is appropriate.
And ideally, if discussions go well with the Air Patrol and the county, hopefully those assessments wouldn't be deferred in any manner, so we'd capture those initially instead of waiting for those funds to be captured by the city.
Kent, is there potential for the business right to the adjacent to hook up to right away?
Exactly, Mayor. That we talked about actually, continuing down to the southeast there. You could pick up, Skydive, what was carved off of the former Skydive property, all the way down to the auto repair shop building. I think from staff standpoint, I think we really want to firmly understand that this is a go before we approach those property owners, because obviously if this doesn't happen in conjunction with the Civil Air Patrol, there's really no sense in beginning conversations to the southeast there. But definitely we want to look at that, and we'll size that up if we come to the conclusion that this is going to happen.
John, that's more or less the Civil Air Patrol is fine with this.
Yeah, at this point, I've indicated to them what they could expect to pay, roughly that $50,000 to $60,000 for their share of that. They want to understand and kind of know a little bit, now that we have a good estimate in place, we can provide that to them. It'll hit right in that mark. The other thing that we're working on, I have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow, maybe Thursday, with Bob Ness from Representative Colin Peterson's office and some of the Representative Peterson's staff to see if we can figure out a way to get some grant money to assist with the utility costs. Those in particular are really our major costs in this project. So we'll see what comes of that. Obviously, that would just reduce what would be taken from reserves of the water and sewer funds. So I will keep you up to date on that as well. So.
Any other questions for John or Kent about it?
So
So any-
we'll proceed under this concept and see where we get with the agreement with Minnesota CAP. So
We won't proceed at all until we have an agreement in place.
correct. There would be nothing happening until there were a developer agreement. And the reason we want to use a developer agreement, because then they don't have to pay fees until they actually start the building process. So we'll use kind of two different agreements. So there's not any money changing hands until everything's ready to go. And then we sign the lease document, and then that's when the money would change hands. So.
And it kind of sounded like they were thinking around Christmas time, correct?
Correct. They'd like to have at least the developer agreement portion done, near the end of the year, maybe early into 2020. So I think we can make that. This is the biggest step, at least on our end. The next is with the work they're doing and we're doing together with FAA. So
Great project.
yes, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Yeah, hopefully things dry out sometime next year, we could actually build this. Bigger concern at this rate.
You mentioned that
You better
ditch, that got filled in to the north, so it doesn't go anywhere south?
This
that-
ditch here,
Yeah.
Steve? Yeah, it runs into this marshy area here, and then it
Okay.
continues into ultimately it gets to McEwen Creek.
The
Yeah.
McEwen Creek.
Yeah.
It runs under the runway and then south through a ditch into the creek.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
We've got a couple minutes, and can you do the roundabout quick, or how long is that gonna take?
Tape on, we'll touch base.
Okay, let's do this. You're under the gun, Ken.
Do a quick 101. And I think this is just good to touch base and realizing we do have a new roundabout that's going to be open hopefully as early as Friday, November 1st, coming up here. So what I put in the packet were basically MnDOT's guidance, the brochure on the roundabouts, why they're implemented, how they're navigated. Some information on the St. James mini roundabouts that were built there a few years ago, and then just some general guidance from the city of Richfield, which is on their website. A lot of that information is redundant. Obviously they reduce crashes, they where pedestrian facilities tie into them, they improve pedestrian movements, or many people think they do. I guess that's, some people think that, so I shouldn't say that's everybody, but what I have here is, basically the first page of MnDOT's guidance. I just wanted to touch on a couple things quickly. From motorist standpoint, you always yield to vehicles already in the roundabout. Once you're in the roundabout, you navigate the roundabout. You keep moving. That's critical to the functionality of a roundabout intersection. Obviously, I'm sure if you've driven some, you've seen some people that don't move, but I think they come up a learning curve and, you know, sometimes it takes time. But, the thing we have going with our community here, there are 3 roundabouts in Hutchinson. St. James, when they did those 2 mini roundabouts and opened them up almost 3 years ago, you know, there weren't any roundabouts in St. James. They didn't have any roundabouts in that region of the state, you know, until you're probably over to the Mankato, down to the Mankato, Rochester area. So some distance away. So we have that in our favor. Another couple things I just highlighted there. Exit the roundabout immediately if an emergency vehicle approaches. You know, get out of the way, get out of the roundabout, and then typically pull as far to the side as possible. If the medians, if you're not going to be able to get far enough to the side to let the emergency vehicle go by, which might be the case with a fire truck apparatus, is just get past the median and then get to the side of the roadway. Third star I have there, give large trucks extra space in a roundabout, and that's critical with respect to the mini roundabout configurations. Mini roundabouts are built, like we've talked as we developed the South Grade Road Corridor project. They're built under the assumption or the conclusion there isn't going to be a lot of freight traffic, and we're confident that's the case in this area. You wouldn't build a mini roundabout out on Highway 15, you know, or you wouldn't build it, you know, in other areas. You wouldn't build one probably on the school road corridor per se, because, you know, there's a fair amount of freight, larger truck traffic that exists. But the biggest thing is watch for trucks. The ends of the medians and the entire center island is mountable. A full-size semi-tractor trailer can make all the movements. However, on occasion, they do have to, you know, mount where their trailer tracks over the very nose of those medians on each leg, I should say. So watch for trucks when there are one on occasion and stay back. Cyclists, we do have the trail facility that we're implementing on the north side. The biggest thing here is if you want to make a movement, there aren't any crossings, so what you should do to get off that trail is use the Anytime Fitness driveway, which is in essence the north leg of the roundabout. Enter the roundabout there and then navigate it as a motorist. And then pedestrians, this one, we don't have any crosswalks, so we don't have any of those zebra crosswalks that are marked up on the diagram here. And, you know, the nearest crossing will be the new crossing with the perimeter lit crossing sign down at Merrill Street on the east leg of that intersection. And really, with that, yeah, I provided some information, like I said, in the packet. Council has any questions, you know, from a traffic safety standpoint, there's been lots of studies, you know, for many years. The state did a study about 3 years ago on approximately 30 roundabouts that were implemented, and, you know, those results of that study mirrored the crash reduction numbers that the National Traffic Safety Institute has seen for many years.
Probably saw the Tribune had a nice article about them over the weekend. Are they really as safe as they say?
I didn't see that, Steve. I was out of town, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
But it
was
was
a good
good.
article.
Okay.
Talked about
I got the
that.
newspaper laying at home. I'll take a look. And then lastly, unless you have any other questions, the city of Richfield, some of the videos that are out there that the Minnesota Local Road Research Board and MnDOT have produced over the years. So we'll talk to HCBN, see if they're interested in broadcasting those videos in the upcoming months here. I don't know, from council's standpoint, if you think there should be any more outreach. I kind of struggle with it a little bit, you know, because like I said, we do have some in our community.
Could be something just on the Facebook page.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
some-
we could send out the brochure on the Facebook page. That's a good idea, Steve.
Couple links to the videos or whatever.
Kent, you went down to St. James, right?
Yeah.
Have you?
Been down there a couple of
And I
times.
know, Steve, you've been down there. I was just interested how many, do people use the back-end angle parking?
One of the
Believe it or
afternoons
not.
I was down there Friday afternoon, I was the only one that used it.
Yeah.
I saw a few.
And,
So I decided to try it and
and just by chance, we have a St. James native in the audience who might be able to speak to that.
Yes.
Do you use it?
Yes, there's not a ton of parking down there, so probably out of necessity, but I think once people get used to it, it just gets more normal. Just like anything else, there's a learning curve to it.
yeah, it's different.
Since you're talking about the roundabout,
Yep.
maybe give an update of the project now.
Yeah, no, things are going well. Obviously, the weather's presented some issues that, hopefully tomorrow, and the weather sounds like it's gonna cooperate, we'll do the final wear course paving. Signs were put up today. Looking at the temperatures, hopefully the striping, the final striping, pavement markings can go down on Friday. And then, like I said, the contractor, to meet our completion date, has, another week or so. We are still waiting on the signal poles and mast arms, unfortunately. We've heard from Milliburn, they had to repaint them evidently. That added another week or so to the delivery. That was more of a QA, QC thing on their end. They weren't happy with the paint job on the first time around, so. Anyways, they'd be repainted. Hopefully those show up tomorrow or Wednesday, or Thursday, day behind you. Yeah.
I have noticed that with the wind, a couple of those signs were laying down and.
Yeah, I noticed that this afternoon too, and yeah, they'll get the barricades back up here before they leave. Yeah, they should be up now. They were gonna do that before they leave the site.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I know, it poses some issues. Yeah, other than that, I think things are going well. Yeah, just so council knows, and we're working on it, it's one of those things that hasn't been a huge priority. We've secured all the easements, the right of entry throughout the project process. We do need to finalize a franchise agreement with the owners of the Anytime Fitness building. And that's that whole parking lot scenario. So that'll be coming in front of council here in the next, maybe the next meeting or the following one in November.
All right,
Right, thank
thanks,
you.
Kent. John? All right, we'll go back to the public hearing, resolution number 15107, resolution approving a housing program and approving the issuance of sale of senior housing facility revenue bond and authorizing the execution of documents relating thereto, Prince of Peace expansion.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, Mayor, council members. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine, Maddie. I was just gonna remind the council, that obviously the last meeting you had the introduction to this project, and you should be familiar somewhat with the project that Prince of Peace is gonna be undertaking, and we have Andy Reid to start us off with giving an overview of the project, and we also have representatives from Citizens Bank and Prince of Peace here to answer any additional questions that you have before you entertain comments from the public, if there are any.
All right.
Sandy?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you know, Prince of Peace is looking at a $3.5 million expansion to its existing senior housing facility, and that's located at 301 Glen Street Southwest. They're looking to construct and equip 11 new independent living units and then convert 2 of the existing living units into office and common space. So Prince of Peace has formally requested that the city issue tax-exempt debt to help them finance this expansion project. And just to let you know, cities may serve as the conduit to issue this kind of debt on behalf of nonprofits, since those nonprofits can't issue that debt directly. So the city council must determine whether, if this is a project that's beneficial and appropriate for the city. This tax-exempt financing will give Prince of Peace the lowest interest rates, which translates into the lowest debt service, and which will make this expansion project feasible. The city will have no obligation to repay this debt. That's Prince of Peace's sole responsibility for the debt payments. And Prince of Peace is also responsible for ensuring that the improvements maintain their tax exempt status throughout the life of the debt. The debt will not have an impact on the city's bond rating, nor will it have an impact or limit, if the state imposes future debt limits, we will not be affected by future debt limits because of this bond issuance. This conduit debt is more beneficial to the city than tax increment financing. If you remember, we financed the original housing facility for Prince of Peace with TIF revenue, and that TIF district was just decertified last year. So this 2019 is the first year the full value is on the tax roll after a 25-year TIF period. So with this conduit debt, the value of this expansion improvement will hit the tax rolls almost immediately. There will be a little delay until the improvements get assessed, and I'm thinking it'll most likely be in the taxes payable year of 2022 when we'll see the full benefit of the value. But that value is going to increase the city's tax base, which, as you know, reduces our tax rate as well. So it's going to be a benefit to all taxpayers, not only in the city, but for the county and school as well. So there's several documents that I included in the packet. The first one is Resolution 15107, which you have a revised version in front of you tonight. This basically represents the city council's approval of the project and the issuance of the tax exempt debt to finance the project. The bond document basically defines the details of the $3.5 million bond and the certain responsibilities of the parties. The loan agreement is between Prince of Peace and the city of Hutchinson, and that basically defines all the terms related to the transaction of the city's bonding and then borrowing those bond proceeds to Prince of Peace. The pledge agreement is basically assigning all the city's rights in that loan agreement to Citizens Bank. So at that point, the city has no obligation regarding the financing. And then the mortgage and security agreements that were included are simply between Prince of Peace and Citizens Bank with no city involvement. So a few points, important points to remember. The senior housing expansion helps fill a need within the community. The value of that facility is going to increase the tax base of the city, which is a benefit to all taxpayers. The city has no obligation related to this debt issuance, and the expansion likely would not be possible without this tax exempt financing. Any questions of me? Thank you.
Open it up for public comment. Motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second it.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve the resolution number 15107. Any other comments?
Standy, you've had, our bond councils reviewed this, everything as well?
Right.
So,
Jennifer Hansen from Dorsey and Whitney reviewed the documents that pertain to the city's involvement. There were a few changes. The resolution had one minor change regarding the Mid-Minnesota organization. There were a few changes, I believe, minor changes to the loan agreement, and those will all be factored in before the agreement is executed.
okay, thanks.
Any other discussion?
Just curious when you're hoping to get going? Next week?
Can I just answer from here?
Sure, yeah.
November 1st.
All right, exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
I always said November 1st. Bring your shovel.
Any other discussion? Call a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Nice to see a little action going on in Hutch. We hardly have any construction going on yet, so. All right, moved on, finished business. Second reading and adoption of ordinance number 19-806, ordinance revising chapter 111, peddlers and solicitors.
Mayor and council members, as you well know, over the past several meetings, we've talked about this ordinance as well as the food ordinance as well. At your last meeting, you did approve this peddlers and solicitors ordinance. It's before you for second reading and adoption, if that's your desire. Or if you are thinking you want to go into a different direction, obviously this would be an opportunity to talk about that as well. Really what's before you tonight is the approval of this ordinance or not.
I thought after the last meeting, I was thinking about it, and the way it was shaking out, the peddler, solicitor, transient merchants there was difference between that and the food vendors, and so as I thought about it more, I thought maybe the easiest way to do it, clean everything up, is to just do away with the license requirement entirely if both of those groups would be on private property. And that treats both the same. It shifts the responsibility to the private property owners, which is fine, that they can make sure all the requirements are met as necessary. And then we would still have the full license requirement, including background checks and the insurance requirement if either would be on public property. And that way it would protect the city from a liability standpoint. We'd be doing our due diligence, if people are coming in. But at the same time, it would be made easier and faster by having the temporary license, all those things we talked about, having the city administrator and staff being able to approve it. And there'd still be the sponsor license for if somebody would want to have an event on public property. So, I did talk to Matt, and he thought it was a reasonable compromise, and so just wanted to share that.
Would that protect the city then, Mark? Or-
It would give the city some protection, certainly.
What would, just having the license on public property? is
Right,
that-
and the insurance
Right.
requirements, et cetera, for things on public property.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that compromise.
I'm all right with it.
Yep. As long as we're still protecting the city, I think that's
Right.
our goal here.
One thing I might just suggest, since we've talked about this a lot, something that Melissa and I had discussed is, we started off with these two ordinances, the food ordinance, and the transient merchant ordinance. And we made a lot of changes to both of them, and some of the latest changes actually, each ordinance refers to the other one. And Melissa and I were talking about whether there's any value of just having one ordinance rather than two that you might have to
Two.
refer back and forth to. Since it kind of sounds like you want to have the same requirements under all these various cases, would there be an advantage to that?
Sense. Other than the food vendors with specific requirements for them, but
Right.
that could be
Yeah.
all incorporated, yeah.
Yeah, it might be easier to put them into one.
simplify it, because it, you know, we were going back and forth, and I think where everybody was kind of like, well, which one are we talking about now? You know, I think doing this, having one kind of covers everything. I think that would be the way to go, simplify it, make it a lot easier, even for you, Chief Gifferson, too, right?
So if that's what you think you want to have happen, obviously for tonight's action, you would vote against the passage of the ordinance, and then staff can bring one comprehensive ordinance for you to consider, hopefully in the not too distant future.
I'll make a motion to deny the ordinance in front of us then.
Second?
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to deny. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
All right. So kind of know what direction we're going in now, Mark, or is there?
As good as anybody does.
It could change.
No, I'm sure we'll be able to put something together for you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Setting council budget workshop for November 12th, 2019 at 4 p.m.
I'll make a motion to set that council shop.
Motion by Dave, or motion by Mary, second by Dave, to set that workshop. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Governance, we have Public Arts Commission minutes from August 14th, 2019. Hutchinson Housing Redevelopment Authority Board minutes from September 17th, 2019. And the City of Hutchinson financial reports and investment reports for September 2019. Andy, you have anything else for us today?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Chief Gifferson? Nothing. Kent?
Nothing else?
Oh, my gosh. All right, Chad?
I don't have anything else either.
Mary?
Just make sure you rake those rows nice and slender along the curb when you're putting them out there, not halfway out in the street.
You looking for a job?
No, but as you drive down the street, a lot of people just put them in the street, and then the rain comes, and then they're all in the gutters, so. They're
Mary,
in our drains.
how about mentioning what's going on tomorrow night?
Well, I can mention that. Tomorrow night is the first night of Historic's Hutchinson's Haunted Tour of Hutchinson. So, if you want, and if you're not too scared, you can pay the nice little sum of $25 a person and get on the People Mover and find out all the history, and might just be a little embellished, about the hauntings in Hutchinson. We'll be starting at the Harrington Merrill House at 6:30, getting on the People Mover, dress warm. I think it's supposed to be a decent evening, but still, dress warm. And from there, we'll be doing about 6 stops, and you'll end up at the depot. And once you get to the depot, there'll be refreshments. So come and join. There's still room on the People Mover. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Dave?
I guess just basically be safe on Halloween night. It's coming up relatively shortly. That would be one thing. It's nice to see projects getting completed and other ones started, so progressiveness is on its way.
All right, thanks, Dave. Steve?
I actually do not have anything, but I thought, yeah.
Oh, my.
Except I thought, Mary, since you talked about the haunted house, and I saw the article in the paper about the church and the windows.
And the windows.
And that you're looking for sponsors or whatever, maybe if people don't get the paper, here'd be an opportunity to just say a little something about that, or how they learn more about that.
All right, well, then back to me.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little update on the church. St. John's is the oldest church in Hutchinson, and the windows are stained glass, and they're in dire need of repair. We've contacted and contracted with a group out of St. Paul, Minneapolis area. It's Tear Hair, and they've done many churches. They've done the Basilica, they've done all over. They're wonderful stained glass people. They will be coming and removing windows, taking that window back to their facility, replacing the window, which they all need to be re-leaded. They're over 100 years old. They're not in the best shape. They're bowed. Ask the mayor. He's been putting on some protective coverings for us, and he knows what shape they're in. But
Yes.
anyway, we're fundraising for those windows, and that's why we've started the Historic Hutchinson Tours. We're also looking for sponsorships. We're going to be looking at grants. We only need a total of about $51,000 to repair all those windows in that church, but it is still God's house, and it still needs to be done. So if you're interested in sponsoring a window, contact me, contact Jim Fahey, contact anybody on our board. You can look on our Facebook page. Contact the mayor. We're looking for dollars, so that's all I can say. Thanks.
And one thing you should mention too, Mary, is that Historic Hutch has been doing a lot of work in that church, and if you haven't been in there
Right.
for, say, a few years,
Or for a play or
yeah,
whatever.
if there's a play going on or something, at least stop by and just take a look at it, because it is, we redid the floors and doing work on it all the time, and it's beautiful in there.
It is, and we've had quite a few weddings in there, but, you know, there's work to be done in there to make it the best that we can make it. It will be another good little facility that can be rented out, used for whatever, whether you're having a wedding or for a play or,
And I saw that painting is kind of in the works or planned. for
oh
that,
yes,
yeah,
the
so-
outside needs to be painted, the basement needs the floor redone, you know, I mean, it needs to be made nice. Right now, it's concrete, and we're looking at putting some type of a finish on that floor. Sheet rocking the walls, making it nice. A bride needs a place to go and get dressed and kind of hide away and come up the back stair and walk in. So,
Romantic, are you?
yes.
All right, thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
You're up, Mark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of reminders for the council. November 11th is Veterans Day, so city offices are closed that day as we remember the service and sacrifice of our nation's veterans. And I believe you have a joint meeting coming up with the county board next, is it the 29th, next week at 3:30 at the fairgrounds, so just remember that. And finally, I had wanted to wish good luck to Mitch Abram, the Hutchinson Leader's finest local government reporter, who's
Moving on.
with us for the last time tonight. And I had wanted to wish him the best of luck. I understand he's going to be going back to his hometown of, is it Cottage Grove?
Yes.
Where he'll be working for the Cottage Grove Gazette or whatever the publication is there.
I'm technically gonna be working on paper writing, but it's probably living at home.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all of your help with the city council. I really appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thanks, Mark. Had Steve Sinsling, who we put it on the police commission, has resigned off the police commission. He's moving out of town, right, chief?
Correct, out of state.
Okay. So Chief Gifferson and Todd Brando, actually, Todd had approached me before and gave me Matt Belkey's, and he filled out an interest form, so, and Chief Gifferson kind of blessed him having him on the board, so if that's okay with everybody, we'll appoint him to the police commission next meeting. The only other thing I got is, I know there's been lots of rain and stuff, there's not too many farmers out, but be careful out on the roads. There, believe it or not, mud on the road and wet is more slippery than ice. So be careful out on the roads, please, and watch for farmers. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Chad, second by Steve to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.